Welcome to How I Solved It. I'm Jennifer Lee, Lead Admin Evangelist at Salesforce. And today we're diving into Deanne Walters' innovative solution for managing object-based calendars, making it super easy to clone a calendar in a matter of seconds, all while avoiding duplicates. So stay tuned after Deanne's demo for a look at how I turned her solution into an agent with Agentforce. If calendar management has ever slowed you down, this episode is for you. Today, I'm joined by awesome admin Deanne Walters. Welcome, Deanne. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be here.
Well, let's get to know you a bit better before we dive into your use case and solution. So I know you've been working in the nonprofit space as a Salesforce admin consultant for a bit. So what type of advice do you have for someone who's starting in this area and that you wish someone told your younger version of yourself when you were first starting?
I would say one of the key admin skills that people don't really talk about is the ability to research. The business or organization is going to throw really off the wall problems at you that you've never expected or necessarily encountered before. But it's really important to be able to research, see what other solutions other folks have done, and be able to incorporate that into your own organization. There's so many great resources, including the Trailblazer community, and you should definitely not be shy about posting on the Trailblazer community. Like, there's so many great people who are out there to give advice and help support people in their journey.
I love that. The community is so great. So what are you most passionate about when it comes to the Salesforce platform and why?
I would have to say it's automation. That's what really excited me when I got my first admin job, was the possibilities of what it could do, how I could leverage it to especially ease my end users experience, make things more standard, just simplify the whole process. And I really love how much Salesforce is investing in declarative automation and how much Flow can do right now.
So I love how when you talked about how you try and push the boundaries of what's possible and to see what you can possibly do in Flow. So what's been the coolest thing that you've built in Flow that you weren't sure was even possible?
I would have to say it was when I created a flow to be able to clone parents, children, and grandchildren, as well as building in logic within that. So that way, one part of the business could make customizations to how the program would work, and then that would automatically get passed into the flow. So it would pick and choose what records would get created and what wouldn't in a matter of minutes in a business process that used to take hours to set up. And it really showcased how Salesforce can help bring the whole business together, make everything more efficient, and just make everything smoother for everyone.
Love that. So share with us the business problem that you're trying to solve.
In this situation, end users sometimes want data not necessarily just in reports or charts, but also in a calendar format, especially if there's overlapping date ranges or multiple things that they're looking at. That helps people visualize and see what is going on. So when I was thinking about this solution, the obvious answer was object-based calendars. However, that requires some level of Salesforce expertise and understanding of some amount of the language, technical language in Salesforce to set up. So I really wanted a super smooth, simple, and consistent way for users to be able to create object-based calendars.
Great. So I'm really excited. Let's nerd out. So can you show us how you built it?
Yes. Let's start with what it looks like from the end user's perspective. So here we have the screen flow, and I have a list of possible object-based calendars that a user could add. A user can select one or multiple, and then when I click Next, it will automatically deduplicate them so that way they don't get multiple calendars of the same type. And then it will automatically take them over to the calendar page. And so then they're able to see those new calendars under their My Calendars and see them on the calendar tab. Now if we jump over into the flow, one key building block for this is that object-based calendars are actually saved as records in Salesforce. So since they're saved as records, we can manipulate them in the same way that you will be able to update or change a account record or contact record. To start off, we'll need to get calendars for people to select from. So I wanted to just get one person's calendars. In this case, I wanted to get my own. And so rather than hard coding my ID, I instead am going to filter by first name and last name to be able to reference that in the next step. Here, the object we're going to be looking for is called calendar. This represents the record object-based calendars. The conditions are owner ID equals the user ID that we found in the last one. And then we're sorting it by ascending by name and storing all records. This is going to allow us to get the list of calendars to then show the user in the next step. Now we're going into the screen. This is the one part that the end user is going to be able to see. My favorite for having something that people will select possibly multiple of is to use a checkbox group. And then under choice, I'm using a collection-based choice set. So I'm able to use the collection that was just gotten in the Get Calendars element. In the choice configuration, I'm using name for the choice label and then saving it in the back end with ID. Now the next step is going to be looping through. This is so we can separate out which calendars were selected and were not selected into a record collection. So for the loop, we're going to be using that same collection variable that we got from the Get Calendars element. Then in the decision, we are going to be having the resource be the question that was on the screen, the operators contains, and the value is the calendar ID for the current item from the loop. This is because the screen results in a list of just all of the IDs in one kind of text string, but we want to break this into the individual records. So if it was found from that list, we then go into our first assignment. This is where we're updating the current item from the loop. First is displayed by changing it to true. When someone goes to the calendar tab, they will then automatically see this displayed. And the next step is the critical part. It's taking the current item from the loop and changing the owner to the current running user. This is important because this is what controls the visibility and changing from something that was visible to me to something that'll be visible to the end user. The next step is going to be adding that current item into our calendar creation collection. Again, we're going with best practice and creating something in a batch and not one by one. This also helps lead us to our next step, which is going to be the deduplication step. Because end users might use this irregularly, I know that they might forget what calendars they already have. So rather than creating multiple of the same name, I wanted to do deduplication within the flow for smoother user experience. So we're starting with another Get Calendar Records. And in this scenario, we're actually going to have the owner ID be equal to the running users. And we're going to make sure to store all of the records. Next, for the comparing of the two collections, we're going to do a loop within a loop. So the first loop is looping over the current calendars from that collection. Then immediately it's going to go into the next loop, which is going to look at the creation collection. Now we're going to have a decision where it will check against the calendar name from the two different loops. So that way, if they match, it will remove the calendar from the collection. So in this case, we're going to remove the one that's looping through the creation collection from the creation collection because it found a match that was already existing with the same name that the user already had. Once both of these loops complete, then it will go into a create records. This one, we're simply putting in the calendar creation collection. Then we're going to the final screen, which is a success screen. This helps tell the user what happened and where to direct them to. In this case, I'm going to hyperlink them to send them to the calendar tab. This allows me to more easily manipulate what the URL will look like and have a larger canvas rather than just within this link URL box. Let's take a look at what that formula looks like. So my formula is a data type of text, and then what you might notice at first is I don't actually have a force.com within my URL. Instead, I just have /lightning. What I have found is that if you are directing to Salesforce from within Salesforce, then you don't need the whole URL. You just need /lightning and wherever you are directing your user to. This way, it will be able to tell whether they're in sandbox or production, and you don't have to hard code a specific URL in. My URL is sending them to the calendar tab, and then the start date, being the current date, is going to send them to the current date, and then the view is going to be in month view. This is because I have found that the month view just gives a better user experience when you're working with date fields. Let me go to the calendar tab and show you what I mean. Like in Gmail or Outlook, you have various views that you can do in Salesforce, including a week view, a day view, that kind of thing. However, what I've found is that if you're just working with date fields, the week view can show the data in only a really small portion of the screen. That's why I prefer to use the month view so you can get a larger swath of information. So that's what makes up this formula. And then we are able to use the final URL merge fields in the actual hyperlink portion to create the URL. The final step of this is creating the page that the flow lives on. This helps give people an easy way to access this flow through the app launcher. And I named mine as calendars as hopefully an intuitive way for users to be able to know what this page does and be able to easily use it. Let's quickly recap my solution. Object-based calendars are saved as records in Salesforce, which means they're accessible by flow, both in finding and creating them. I created a flow for the end users to be able to easily copy existing object-based calendars and create them for themselves. I also added a deduplication portion to the screen flow, so that way end users wouldn't end up with a lot of the same calendars. Back to you, Jen.
Thanks, Deanne. I love that presentation. We know that agents are the future, and while we're just starting to get folks onto Agentforce, Deanne's solution can be handled with Agentforce. In fact, I was able to build this agent in a few hours, and I did this by transforming the screen flow into smaller auto-launch flows. So let me show you how we can turn this into an agent so that the user can interact with an employee agent to clone another user's calendar and be Agentforce ready. So I'm currently in the org as Mochi Channel, and I have my own calendar as well as 2 other calendars, active cases, and all active campaigns Mochi Creator. And so from here, I'm going to log out as Mochi. This is my calendar. I don't have any other calendar views. I'm going to go and talk to Einstein. I'd like to clone a calendar. So Einstein is taking my request, and then it asks me to provide the name of the user who created the calendar and the full name of the user. So we're going to say the person that created the calendar is Mochi Channel and Jennifer Lee, respectively. And it came back with 2 calendars that I can clone from. And these were from Mochi's calendar. So I'm going to just pick this one here and say that this is the calendar that I want to clone. And it says it was successful. So I'm going to go back here and we're going to reload the page. And we see that it did in fact clone the object-based calendar. So how did I do that? So let's go into Agent Builder. And here I created an employee agent and we have the topic calendar management. So here's my topic, calendar management. And we're telling it description, routes users requests related to calendar management, including cloning. And the scope of this agent is that it clones a user selected calendar for another user. Now, the instructions here is to get the name of the user who created the calendar and who it is to be cloned by. And that was that first prompt that Einstein came back with. My next instruction is if the user wants to clone a calendar, always use the name of the user who created the calendar as input. And this is a variable for the flow, which I'll review in a second. And the user the calendar will be cloned for as the input var user full name for the get user ID for creator and clone to action. And this is a flow action. Now, my next instruction was if the user wants a clone calendar, always use the output var calendar creator ID from the get user ID for creator and clone to action from the previous instruction as the input for the var calendar creator ID for the get user's calendar flow action. And we'll show you that in a little bit. And list the names as the output var calendar collection. And my last instruction here is once the user selects the calendar name, is to use the calendar name as an input var calendar name and the output var calendar creator ID in the clone calendar flow action. So here the instructions are really important, right? Because it's saying get this information, then take this information, put it in as an input, or take this information as output, put it as an input into this other thing, right? So you really need to be detailed in terms of what you're expecting Einstein to do. And then for the topics, I have here several flow actions that I custom built based on Deanne's original solution for her screen flow. I chunked it out into 3 separate flows. The first flow being to get the user ID for the creator and clone to, right? That was that first prompt where Einstein asked me, who is the originator of the calendar and who is it being cloned to? And then once we provide that, then it went into get user's calendar information. And lastly, from there, it then went into a clone calendar situation. So let's take a look at those flows real quick. In the first flow, get user ID for creator and clone to. We are getting the ID for the creator from the user object, where the name equals the full name of the calendar creator, and we're storing all fields. Our next element is a get records, and this is to get again on the user object, but this time we're getting the user ID based on the full name of the person that we're cloning for. And then lastly, this is important because we want to have these filter into the output that's available for the agent to take action on. So we have two variables, var calendar creator ID, and this is looking at the ID from the first get records here. And then the var user ID equals to what was the ID that was found here in this get records. And let's quickly look at the variables real quick. So we have the full name, and those are inputs, right? That's being sent from our agent, as well as the calendar creator ID is available for input. Now, what we're sending back are available for outputs. All right, so let's take a look at our other flow. Here is our on-launch flow to get the user's calendars. So here we're doing a get records of the calendar view where the owner ID equals the calendar creator ID. And when we take a look at that variable, we see that it's available for input. And that's the agent taking that information and sending it into our auto launch flow. Now, our next step here is to do a loop of all the calendars that we found in the get records. And then for each item, we have an assignment. So where we have a variable calendar record equals the loop record. And then we have another assignment that then adds the variable calendar record to a variable calendar collection. And if we take a look at that collection, there it is, we'll see that it is available for output, which means we're sending it back into our agent from our flow. All right, so now let's take a look at our last flow. And this does the bulk of what Deanne's screen flow did, where it took the information for the calendar and it then updated the is displayed to true and set the owner ID to the one that it's cloned to. And then it goes through the process of deduping and all of that. All right, so let's test out an agent. I'm going to tell it I'd like to clone a calendar. All right, so what the agent did was it selected the calendar management, and one of the instructions was to get more information. So I'm going to provide Moji Channel and Jennifer Lee. Okay, so it came back and said, what calendar do you want to clone? So I'm going to select the second one, which is the all active campaigns. And what the agent did was it again selected the calendar management topic and invoked the flow called get user ID for creator and clone to. And it passed through in the inputs for the var user full name, Jennifer Lee, and the var calendar creator full name, Mochi Channel. And then it came back with the IDs for the channel creator, which is Mochi's ID, and the user ID for myself. So next, it invoked another flow called get user calendars. And here it passed in the input for var calendar creator ID, Mochi's ID. And then as the output, it came back with active cases and all active campaigns Mochi Creator. And that's what it provided in the list. So now I'm going to say, I want the all creative campaigns Mochi Creator, please. And now it's evaluating my crust, and it successfully cloned it. And if I click on here, I can go to the calendar. So the rep selected the calendar management topic. It then invoked the flow action called clone calendar. And here we're sending as a calendar name, all active campaigns, Mochi Creator, and the user ID is my ID, and it came back and did the cloning. So if I click here, we'll be able to go to the calendar. And there you have it. All right, so thank you, Deanne, for showing us your innovative solution for cloning object-based calendars and for being a guest on how I solved it.
Thank you, Jen. It was great to be here.
You just saw Deanne Walters tackle calendar management with Flow. And I hope her solution sparks some new ideas for automating your own calendar processes and simplifying your team scheduling. Thank you for tuning in. Keep building, keep automating, and keep making an impact. Until next time, keep being awesome.
Awesome admin.